In November 1935, a London dentist named Norman MacDonald wrote an angry letter to the editor of the Times newspaper. Little did he know that the letter he wrote would set up a chain reaction of events that would change the world forever. His letter led to the invention of something that is still in widespread use today. It is used in every country on earth, millions of times each week, and has saved millions of lives. You have probably used it yourself at some point. Our story starts here, in Wimpole Street, just north of Oxford Street in central London, and at number 27. In November 1935, early one morning, a fire started in the rooms at number 27, Wimpole Street. Mr. MacDonald, who lived opposite number 27, was the first to see the fire and raised the alarm. He tried to call the fire brigade. He did this, as all people would do in 1935, by picking up the phone and dialing 0. He went through to the switchboard and was placed on hold as the operator was dealing with other calls. However, there was no hold music back then, and he probably wasn't even told that his call was important to them. Meanwhile, a milkman who had also seen the fire and had run to the nearby fire alarm point on Harley Street and alerted the local fire brigade. The fire engines turned up whilst Mr. MacDonald was still on hold with the operator. Tragically, 5 women died in the inferno at number 27 Wimpole Street, and Mr. MacDonald felt that those deaths could easily have been avoided. Overwhelmed with grief and frustration at the situation, he did the only thing he could think of to change things. He wrote an angry letter to the editor of the Times newspaper. The letter was printed on the 11th of November 1935 and triggered a public outcry, which led to the British government setting up an inquiry and searching for a solution. The first step was to create a universal emergency number that would not be held up by a switchboard. The British government launched what would eventually become 999. The second step was to make the number free of charge to call. No fumbling around for small change when lives are at risk. London would be the first city in the world to have a universal emergency number. Now, every country on earth has some form of an emergency telephone number. In America, it is 911. The USA was lagging some distance behind Britain, as 911 would not come into existence until 1968, over 30 years after London started 999. Canada also uses 911, as do most countries in South America. In Russia, Europe and Africa, 112 or 117 are most popular, although it is also commonplace to have separate numbers for police, fire and ambulance services. Australia has 000, New Zealand has 111, and Japan and China have either 110 for police or 119 for fire and ambulance. Even war-torn countries such as Afghanistan or Syria or Yemen have their own emergency numbers, although there is no guarantee of the kind of response that you will get. And a secretive country like North Korea uses 119 to call the fire service. And it can all be tracked back to London, to a road just north of Oxford Street, as Britain was the first country in the world to have a universal emergency number, and London was the first city to use it, and it all started from this street, Wimpole Street. For the British government, once they decided to have an emergency number, and that it would be free to call, the next step was to decide on the number. 999 was not the first consideration. 111 was first considered, but it was felt that it could be called too many times by accident by telephone lines shaking in bad weather. 222 was also considered, but that was already in use. 707, or SOS on the rotary dial, was the most popular for obvious reasons, However, it was felt that the number 7 would be difficult to find in the dark or in a smoke-filled environment, so as number 9 was one hole away from the dial stop, it would be easier to find. Those viewers under 30 might struggle to understand this concept, but for us golden oldies, it used to take a couple of minutes to dial a phone number. And when the phone rang, we answered it with no idea who would be on the other end of the line, and it was customary for us to answer the phone saying our own number. The 999 service was launched on Wednesday, 30th of June 1937. However, it only covered a 12-mile radius surrounding Oxford Street in central London. In the first week, over 1,000 calls were made to the 999 number. Unfortunately, the jokers started almost immediately, with 10% out of all the calls in the first week being prank calls. The government were forced to issue a statement on how to use the new emergency number. Only dial 999 if the matter is urgent. For instance, the man in the flat next to you is murdering his wife, or you have seen a heavily masked cat burglar peering round the stack pipe of the local bank building. If you have merely lost Little Towser, or a lorry has come to rest in your front garden, just call up the local police. The public response was very positive, with the first arrest from a 999 call coming just a week after its launch. The caller said that he was pleased to see his tax money being put to good use and was very surprised by the response time. Prior to 999, London residents would dial 0 and then ask for the operator to put them through to Whitehall 1212, which would then get them put through to the police. Now, with 999, a klaxon and flashing lights would go off at the switchboard each time it was dialed, and the call would become a priority to answer. All other calls would have to wait. Glasgow would be the next city to adopt the 999 number the following year, but the event of the Second World War put a hold on its expansion to the rest of the country. After the end of the war, 999 would be rolled out to the other major cities in Britain, such as Birmingham, Liverpool, Newcastle and Belfast. However, it would only be available to the whole of the UK from 1976, when the telephone exchanges were automated. So nearly 40 years would pass between the launch of 999 and the ability to call it from any phone in the country. You can now call 999 from any phone on any mobile network. And you are not just limited to police, fire or ambulance. You can also call out the Coast Guard, Mountain Rescue, Lowland Rescue, Cave Rescue, Moorland Search and Rescue, Quicksand Search and Rescue, Mine Rescue and Bomb Disposal, although for many of those rescue operators it is better to start with the police first if there is a risk to life. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe and check out the other videos on the Offbeat London channel.